There are stories, and then there are confessions that should never made it out of the walls they were born in. This isn't an urban legend. This is the diary of a man who watched something sacred, something stolen, happen in a soundstage that no longer exists on paper but refuses to disappear in reality. Michael Jackson didn't just lose his voice, he was separated from it. And the person who did it, she didn't even blink. So tell me, do you think really took something that wasn't hers? Or was she just the vessel for something even worse? Tell us in the comments. Chapter 1. I was just supposed to mop the floor. Diary entry, October 5th, 2023. I don't tell this story out loud anymore. The last time I did, I lost a job, got a wellness check from LAPD, and was advised to rest for a while. No one wants to believe you when you say you saw something that wasn't meant to be seen. Especially not when it involves people like her. Especially not when it involves him. But I was there, and I didn't imagine it. I didn't dream it. I was 22 years old, just trying to pay off a 2-year-old debt for a car I didn't even own anymore, working the graveyard shift at ABC Studios in Burbank. 1993. The year things got too quiet for comfort in that place. You don't know what silence means until you've walked through Studio G after midnight. Studios are supposed to be loud. Laughter from sitcom, coughs from audience members, crew guys yelling, always yelling. But on that night, May 20th, 1993, Studio G was too quiet, like someone had vacuum sealed the sound right out of the air. They told me to stay clear of Tier 3 segment prep. That's what the memo said. No explanation, no names, just a one-line warning. Tier 3 segment, stage 113, no entry, no INTRUPTONS. But see, I wasn't part of production. I was maintenance. Nobody ever tells us janitors anything useful unless they want something cleaned before their name is tied to it. My shift supervisor, guy named Rich, who smelled like beef jerky and aqua, handed me a strange work order that night. Booth drainage check, it said, routine on paper. But what made it weird was the footnote, interview 113, ritual compliant. I didn't know what that meant. Still don't, not really. But I knew enough to trust my gut when it said something was off. The soundstage was locked when I got there, not unusual. But instead of the normal system, someone had placed an old-fashioned chain across the door handles. I stood there staring at it for maybe 5 minutes, long enough to feel stupid. Then someone on the other side unlatched it without a word. Door creaked open 2 inches, just enough for an eye to meet mine. The man behind it didn't introduce himself. He just whispered, "You're early." I said, "For a drainage check." He didn't respond. Just opened the door all the way and stepped back. I was in. The first thing I noticed was the layout. Not the equipment, or rather the absence of it. No boom mics, no light rigs, no production assistants packing around. Just a wide, empty room with a large circular pattern carved, or maybe burned, into the floor. The circle was filled with embedded lights, dim and pulsing like a heartbeat. Around the edges were mirrors. 8 of them perfectly spaced, angled inward toward the center. No visible cameras, but I saw something mounted behind one of the mirrors. Looked like a lens, but not one I recognized. Military grade? Maybe, or something else. I almost turned around right then. But something held me there, not fear, not curiosity, something heavier, like a pressure in my chest, warning me that whatever this was, it was old. Older than TV, older than the people pretending to control it. That's when I saw her. She walked in from the far end of the stage, carrying a small black box with both hands like it weighed more than it looked. But her name wasn't on any of the official memos. In fact, the only reference to her was some scribble I saw later. "Oh, HARP, Tier 3 segment." What the hell is HARP? No one I asked ever answered. Most just looked away. She placed the black box in the center of the circle, right on a slightly raised brass plate. The box had a number etched into it, 1964, with a red circle drawn around 31. That number stuck with me. It didn't make sense. There is no 31st month unless it wasn't a month. Maybe it was a date. Maybe it was a countdown. I don't know. I was trying to look busy, fiddling with a mop bucket I hadn't used in hours when the atmosphere shifted again. The air went thick, like someone had poured syrup into the room. That's when he walked in. Michael Jackson. And I swear to whatever God still hears me, that was not the Michael Jackson the world knew, not that night. His face looked sunken, paler than usual, and not from makeup. He was whispering to himself, rocking slightly as he walked barefoot across the polished floor. His eyes flicked toward the mirrors like he expected them to move. I remember the words he muttered over and over. Dream doubles, they drift, voice drift. It's not me in there. I swear on my mother's name, it chilled me worse than any horror movie I've ever watched. Because he meant it. This wasn't performance. This wasn't eccentricity. This was a man who was genuinely terrified of being unhooked from something. Didn't smile, didn't welcome him, didn't even speak to him directly. She just gestured toward the center of the circle. Michael obeyed without hesitation, like something had already taken hold of him. One of the producers, some short man with Coke bottle glasses and a voice like gravel, leaned toward another and muttered, "Keep him in the circle until the light fades." That's a quote. I remember every word of it. And I remember the panic in my own gut when I realized I wasn't supposed to hear that. I turned, pretending again to mop a corner that had already been cleaned twice. But the whispers were getting louder. Not theirs. His. Michael was whispering so fast now that the words blurred together. Then opened the box. I didn't see what was inside, not clearly. Just a glimpse, a black velvet lining and something pulsing softly like it had veins. That's the best way I can describe it. A soft red pulse, almost like the floor lights were sinking to it. Placed both her hands over it and began to hum. Not words, not music, a frequency. That's what it felt like, a tone, one that made the back of my teeth ache. I touched my jaw without thinking. The pain spread down my neck. Michael collapsed to his knees. Not like he was weak, like he was pulled down. I heard him whimper, "It's not my voice anymore." Then a sound faint like a click and the mirrors lit up from within. Not reflections, images, faces, other Michaels. I don't know how else to say that. It was like every version of him, from Thriller, from Bad, from Black or White, was watching back. Some of them were smiling, others were crying. One was just screaming silently. Said one word then. I'll never forget it, no matter how many nights I begged to. "Transfer." That's all she said. And in that moment, Michael arched back, his mouth open but no sound coming out. The mirrors shattered inward. Not outward, inward, toward the center, like the glass was sucked through a vacuum. Then everything went black. No lights, no box, no. Just me and him. Michael was slumped over, breathing hard. I ran to him. I don't know why, instinct maybe. I touched his shoulder. His skin was cold, but he flinched like I'd burned him. His eyes shot open and he whispered, "I'm not supposed to be here. I was supposed to wake up somewhere else." Then he looked through me and said, "They're still using my face." I didn't sleep that night, didn't finish my shift, didn't even collect my mop bucket. I walked out of ABC Studios and never stepped back into Studio G again. Rich never asked about the drainage check. No one followed up. 2 weeks later, that entire stage was decommissioned. Official reason? Structural inconsistencies. No records, no footage, no trace. But I kept one thing. A single shard of that mirror, the only piece that didn't vanish with the rest. I wrapped it in cloth and hid it in a shoebox for years. Until last month when I heard give a speech about her first ever interview with Michael. On TV. 2023, talking like it was the first time they'd ever sat down. She was lying, because I was there in 1993, and I watched her take something from him that night. Not his fame, not his voice, his soul. Chapter 2, she wasn't speaking to him. Diary entry, October 12th, 2023. I never meant to watch what I saw that night. Not really. I wasn't some curious intern with a camcorder or a grip with a side hustle in blackmail. I was just supposed to mop the damn floor. But once you see something like that, once it grabs your brain and folds it into shapes it was never built for, you either run or rot. I didn't run fast enough. After the blackout moment, after the mirrors imploded and the humming stopped, something strange happened. Production just carried on. No screams, no people rushing in. It was like everyone had rehearsed that chaos like it was written into the script. Except there wasn't a script, not for this, not for what I was about to witness. They told me to stick around to clean afterward, but no one told me where to wait. So I tucked myself into a narrow storage compartment just left of the stage, a half-rotted plywood nook stacked with broken extension cords and unused set panels. I pulled the sliding panel almost shut, left a crack just wide enough to breathe and see through. Maybe it was cowardice, maybe survival instinct, but from that sliver of darkness, I saw everything they never meant for anyone like me to see. Michael came back onto the stage like he'd been rebooted, blank-faced, hollow. He walked slower, more mechanical now, like he was packing out a rhythm someone else was tapping into his skull. And then she came in, but different. She wasn't wearing the same blouse she had when she arrived earlier. This one had around the collar patterns like runes or glyphs, not in any language I recognized, not any human language at all. Her expression was warm, but her movements weren't. Too controlled, too timed, like every blink had been metronomed. What struck me first, what made my skin go cold all over, was that they didn't shake hands, they didn't hug, no casual celebrity banter. Instead, she bowed, just slightly. A shallow, deliberate dip of the head and shoulders, and he didn't respond, didn't move a muscle. Just stared at her like a dog waiting for a command it was too scared to disobey. The lights dimmed again, but only over them. Not the whole stage, just their circle. I swear the glow came from the floor this time. A faint, pulsing blue light emanated from beneath Michael's chair. I thought it was just backlighting until I noticed the pulse. It wasn't random. It was timed to his breath. And when he hesitated between answers, when there was a delay, it flickered faster, like it was prodding him. Sat down opposite him, placed her hands palms down on the table, and tilted her head like she was listening to a song no one else could hear. Then she asked the first question, and I knew instantly something was wrong. "Do you remember the silence?" That was it, not "How are you, Michael?" Not "Thank you for being here," just that. No production script ever begins like that, not unless it's for a... Michael blinked a few times, eyes glossy, mouth half open. I hear it sometimes. In my dreams," he whispered. That's when I realized it wasn't an interview. It was a ritual pretending to be one. The questions that followed weren't questions, not really. They were triggers. Each one chipped away at him like she was tuning an old piano until it remembered the notes on its own. And he wasn't really answering, he was reciting. But the rhythm didn't match, would ask and he'd answer, but the timing was always off. Like he was stuck in a different track of time, lagging by a second or two. Or like the person answering wasn't the person being spoken to. Leaned in slightly and repeated, "Do you remember the silence?" Again, not the same way. Her tone changed, like she was dialing in a frequency. And Michael began to tap his fingers on the table, index, ring, pinky, index, ring, pinky, over and over. A pattern. Morse code maybe, I don't know, but it wasn't random. Then her shadow shifted. I know that sounds insane. Shadows don't move on their own, but I swear to you hers did. It moved a split second, did. When she leaned forward, the shadow did it first, like it was puppeting her, not the other way around. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, even held my breath, thinking maybe I was lightheaded. But it kept happening, over and over. Her gestures lagged behind the movements of her own silhouette. That's when she opened the black box again. This time it wasn't the poolsing thing from before. This time it was objects, 3 of them. First, a tuning fork. She struck it lightly against the leg of the table. It rang out with this crystalline hum, not too loud, but the kind of sound that crawls up your spine and sits behind your eyes. Michael flinched like someone had stabbed him with a needle made of sound. Second, a crystal shard, smoky, almost gray, looked like obsidian but shimmered when the stage lights hit it. She placed it on the underside of the table, right beneath his seat. I heard her whisper, barely audible. Voice is memory, memory is soul. Third, a cassette tape, labeled in thick black marker Vox Merge Final. Now I know cassettes were still around in the early 90s, but something about that one felt off. It looked new, too new, like it hadn't been made in 1993, like it had been brought from somewhere else entirely. Placed the tape on the table like it was sacred, and then she did something I've never seen any interviewer do. She closed her eyes and started mouthing something silently. Her lips moved in perfect sync with Michael's breathing, not her own. His, like she was syncing up, plugging into his rhythm. Michael started to sweat, not from heat, from something else. His skin was clammy pale, his voice cracked as he tried to speak again. They said I could sleep, they said I'd get rest after this. But wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking through him. And that's when I realized something that made me want to scream into the dark. She wasn't speaking to him. Whoever or whatever was answering her, it was Michael, not the Michael Jackson sitting in that chair. She tapped the tuning fork again. The floor pulsed. The lights dimmed just slightly more. And Michael, if that was still him, whimpered, "Don't put me back in the box." The interview continued, but it wasn't an interview. It was a process. Each question peeled back a layer. Each object pulled him deeper, and with every response grew calmer, smoother, like she was stabilizing, like she was. At one point, the tuning fork tone didn't fade, it echoed, even though no one touched it again. That's when the mirrors flickered back on, not shattered this time, lit. Each one displaying a version of Michael, but this time he wasn't alone. Each mirror had someone else in the background, faces obscured watching, some with masks. One looked like a child holding a red balloon. Another looked like, I swear to God, an early image of herself, but twisted, smiling, watching too closely. And then Michael's voice shifted. It deepened, slowed. He said, "I never had a childhood because the first one wasn't mine. I'm only remembering now, the real me still asleep." That was the last thing I heard before the lights snapped back to full brightness, and a bell rang twice from off stage. Stood up, no expression. Michael slumped forward. A PA entered and said, "We're good, got what we needed, reset stage for cleanup." I slipped back from the panel before I was seen. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the mop when I tried to pretend I'd just gotten there. The room felt different now, used up, like something ancient had passed through it and taken what it wanted. And no one else acted like anything strange had happened. But I saw it. I saw her shadow move first. I saw him beg not to go back in the box. I saw the Vox Merge tape. And worst of all, when she walked past me on her way out, looked me dead in the eye and smiled. Not like a celebrity, not like a human, like someone checking inventory. And I knew then I wasn't supposed to survive that night. Chapter 3. The lights never turned off. Diary entry, October 19th, 2023. There's a moment when your body starts rejecting reality before your brain does. I felt it somewhere between the second and third time I tried to leave that night. My legs moved, my eyes saw doors, but my gut knew I wasn't going anywhere. The interview had ended, at least that's what they all pretended. Left the circle, Michael slumped in his chair like a deflated marionette, and the crew dispersed as if they just wrapped a cooking segment. No panic, no confusion, just that mechanical studio calm that only comes when everyone's been told not to ask questions. I waited a few beats, then another. When the last assistant disappeared through the far hallway, I stepped out of the storage compartment, wiping my hands on my pants like it would somehow remove what I just witnessed. I didn't look at Michael. I couldn't. I just wanted out. I took the hallway that led back toward the maintenance wing, a path I'd walked 100 times. Past the equipment closet, past the framed poster of the Love Boat, left at the vending machine that never worked. But when I turned the corner, I was back at the soundstage entrance. At first, I thought I'd taken the wrong turn, so I doubled back, tried a different path, through the emergency stairwell this time, down 2 floors, out the fire exit. The door opened to a side corridor with orange-tinted lighting and flickering fluorescence. I walked it for 2 full minutes before hitting another bend. Turned the corner. Stage 113 again. I felt it in my teeth, a pressure, like the air was thicker here, pressing down on my eardrums, making the hallway when I wasn't moving. I stood completely still and heard footsteps, not mine. I ran, not toward anything, just away from that door, away from the sound. I slammed through another hallway, hand dragging along the wall to keep track like I used to do when I was a kid lost in the woods. My heart beat so loud it muffled the sound of my own breath. And still, I ended up back at that stage entrance. The light above the door wasn't just on, it pulsed, dim bright, in a rhythm that felt familiar. My hand instinctively reached for the light switch just inside the door. There wasn't one. The entire studio lighting grid was on, but there were no switches, no master control board, no dimmers, just glowing white-blue light that responded not to hands or buttons, but to her voice. I stepped inside as if lured, like something wanted me to see the rest. Wasn't visible, but her humming still filled the air. Low, melodic, sinister in how gentle it tried to be. The lights followed it, softening when her tone dipped, flaring when she rose to higher notes. There was no explanation for it. No tech on the grid could do that. This was not lighting. It was something else, something responsive, something alive. I moved cautiously across the stage. The air changed again. The AC went dead, but instead of heating up, the room got colder, much colder. I pulled out the small analog thermometer clipped to my belt. It was part of my maintenance checklist protocol. I checked it and my stomach dropped. 33.3 F, inside a sealed, active building. It wasn't frostbite cold, but it was symbolic cold. Cold meant to represent something, death maybe, or transition. Michael tried to stand. That's when the mic, the one clipped to his collar, still live, shorted out. There was a spark, a fizz, then a high-pitched hum so loud I dropped to one knee. 2 crew members who'd returned to reset the stage collapsed, clutching their ears. Blood trickled from one's nose. The sound didn't just come through the speakers. It came through the walls, vibrated the mirrors, shook the floor under my feet. The hum went on for nearly 30 seconds before hum overpowered it, revering it note by note. That's when I recognized it. She was humming Ben Michael's old song, but she was humming it backwards. Not just the melody flipped, the soul of it was reversed, twisted. It was like listening to a lullaby through a dying radio in a room full of coffins. Michael's head lolled to one side. I swear to God his eyes flickered like the irises glitched, too fast, too wrong. And then the surfaces began to change. First the mirrors, no surprise there, they were already cursed. But then the floor, the wax I'd polished earlier, it shimmered, reflected. Not just faces, duplicates. Michael twice. One version seated, the other standing behind him, mouth open in silent scream. I turned toward the props, the rusted microphone stand, the fake piano shell, the unused director's chair. And each one began to show distorted versions of him, as if every reflective surface had become a canvas for the fragmented pieces of his soul. His voice vanished, replaced by a new voice, not hers. It came through the intercom. The soul transfer pending, subject be stabilizing. My knees nearly gave. My skin felt like it was humming. I spun in circles trying to find the speaker it came from. But it wasn't just the speaker. It came from everywhere through the metal piping, the light grid, the floor itself. Subject B. Was Subject A him? I turned toward, she was holding a sheet of paper, not a script, not a cue sheet. It was a sigil. Hand-drawn, intricate, bleeding through onto her fingers, the ink looked wet, looked alive. She raised it toward Michael, not showing it to him, just holding it in his direction. And he twitched, like a marionette on bad strings. His mouth opened, and I thought I saw smoke drift out. Not steam, not breath, smoke. Said one word. Bind. Michael's image in the mirrors froze. The duplicate reflections all locked in the same agonized scream. And then the worst part. They all started moving out of sync. Like every version had its own will now. One turned toward me. Another banged its fists against the edge of the mirror. One turned its back and simply walked away into darkness. But the real Michael, the one on stage, he went limp. And then his body did something unnatural. It levitated. Just 3 inches, but long enough. The sigil in his hand burned. No flame, just blackened edges curling in on themselves, and with a whisper she folded it and dropped it into the black box. She looked right at me. I hadn't made a sound, I hadn't moved, but she looked at me like she knew I'd always be there, like this had happened before. She said softly, "The lights never turn off, not for those who saw." And then, everything went dark. But not black, not the kind of dark you get when a light switch is flipped. This was red dark. Shadowlit. The mirrors still glowed faintly, each one showing a different place now. An orphanage, a hospital hallway, a burning field, a concert. Each one with Michael in it, or part of him. I fell backward, crawled toward the only exit I hadn't tried, the one they used to wheel equipment. I didn't care if it looped. Studio doors didn't slam behind me. They simply vanished. I looked back and they weren't there anymore, just a wall clean, matte black like it had never held a door. I rubbed my eyes so hard my nails scratched skin. Still gone. I stumbled into the corridor, breathing like I'd just sprinted out of but the building hadn't gone back to normal. No, it pretended to. The buzzing fluorescent lights above me flickered like they were rejoining reality, but the air still felt wrong. You know how a microwave hums when it's about to pop something? That low, tight coil of energy, it was in the walls, it was in the damn floor. I tried calling out, "Hello?" just once. My voice sounded muffled, like it got swallowed by the ceiling tiles before it even bounced back to me. Then the intercom clicked on again. Not static, not an announcement, breathing. At first shallow, steady, then louder, like someone inches from the mic. I froze. Then the voice returned, not this time, a man's, croaky, old. Soul transfer, complete, subject B, elevated, subject A, purged. My knees locked. Purged. That word doesn't come up in any normal workplace. Not unless you're deleting files or killing bacteria, or, God forbid, people. A door creaked open a few feet ahead, just wide enough for light to spill out, weak and yellow like from an old lamp. I should have turned the other way. I should run out of the building, but whatever was left of my logic whispered, "Go see. If you don't see it now, you'll always wonder." So I stepped in. The room was set up like a small AV editing bay, monitors, tape decks, and a bulky reel-to-reel player. There was only one tape loaded, the same one I saw on stage. Vox Merge Final. Except now someone had crossed out final with thick red ink and scrawled "split failed" underneath it. I moved closer. The screen blinked once, just black, then static, then him. Michael sitting in that chair, but not the one I saw earlier, not broken, not whispering. This one was screaming. Mouth wide open, head thrashing like he was trying to shake something loose from his skull. And across from him, a silhouette, not something taller, hooded, moving like smoke. The feed cut. I heard a thud behind me. Whipped around. The door was closed again, no knob. I turned back to the screen. It had a message now. One line centered in white. Memory unstable, reassignment in process. And then something that nearly made me scream. Playback scheduled, 6/25/2009, final dissolve. That date, June 25, 2009. The day Michael Jackson died. I slammed my fists on the console, tried to eject the tape. It wouldn't move. It felt like it had melted into the machine, bonded by more than plastic. Then a drawer beside the reel-to-reel clicked open. Inside, another sigil. This one drawn on what looked like skin. Human, animal, I don't know, it was rough, tan, still slightly warm to the touch. The ink was thicker this time, raised, like it had been carved, not written. It pulsed once under my fingers. I dropped it. A voice whispered, not from the room, but inside my head. You took it, now it knows you. I backed out of the room. I couldn't stay in there. Not with that thing, not with that reel-to-reel playing loops from a future that had already happened. The hallway bent again. Only now, it didn't take me back to the soundstage. It took me underground. I don't remember descending any stairs, but suddenly I was walking past exposed piping, cold cement floors, rusted signs marked SUBLEVELC. The walls were lined with sealed glass panels. Behind each, costumes, sparkling gloves, jackets, replicas of famous outfits. Only not replicas. Each one had a number etched into the glass. Up to 7. Each had a small inscription. Vox host iteration incomplete. Host, not wearers, not performer. Host. I kept walking until the last glass case, where the number plate had been ripped off. Inside wasn't a costume. It was a mirror. And it showed me. Except not quite me. My reflection was a half-second behind. Then it blinked. I didn't. I ran. I don't know how I got out. I remember stairs. I remember cold. I remember the sensation of being watched so hard it physically hurt, like eyes inside my skin. But eventually, morning. Birds. The real world. Cars on Riverside Drive. A man in a blue jogging suit. A woman yelling at her kid near the parking lot. All normal. Except I was. The lights never turned off. Even now, they don't. I moved to Oregon in '94, changed my name, never told a soul except one old friend from ABC who left the industry after the Voice incident. He didn't need details, just said, "You heard it too, didn't you?" He hung himself 2 years later. I still see Michael sometimes. Not the real ones. The reflections on bus windows, car hoods, rain puddles, always twice, never just one. I keep the sigil in a sealed box under my floorboards. Some nights, I swear I hear it breathing. I haven't used a mirror in 27 years. Because sometimes I still hear the tape rewind. And the lights. They never, ever turn off. Chapter 4, The Interview That Wasn't Aired. Diary entry, October 26, 2023. Everyone thought the interview ended after 60 minutes. ABC archived it, cut it for future licensing. They aired a few clips, blurred some transitions, tweaked Michael's pauses to make him seem thoughtful instead of hollowed out. Said the usual closing line, "Thank you, Michael, for your truth." The camera stopped rolling. That's the version the public remembers. But I was still there, hidden behind an unplugged fog machine near stage left, my knees locked, breath caught in the top of my chest. I should left when the lights dimmed and the crew packed up, but some part of me knew the real show hadn't started yet. I stayed because something about the room changed after the cameras cut. It wasn't technical. It wasn't lighting or sound. It was intention. The tension in the air didn't fade after the interview, it hardened. Time started to stretch in unnatural ways. For the next 7 hours, I watched what no one else did. At first, nothing happened. The techs filed out one by one, casual, chewing gum, checking their pagers, smiled politely, nodded at the lead producer who said, "We'll wrap the rest tomorrow." He didn't wait for her to respond, just grabbed his binder and left. The room emptied. Well, she stayed. Didn't touch her bag, didn't speak. Just sat across from Michael, who hadn't moved in 20 minutes. Then wordlessly, she stood and walked over to her case. Not the black box. This was a separate leather bag, long, narrow, the kind doctors used to carry in the 1800s. She opened it and removed a single thick white candle, almost industrial in size, the kind you'd expect at a monastery, not a TV set. She struck a match. Not from a book of them, not a lighter. A wooden match soaked in something. The flame hissed, green at first, then gold. She held it above the candle's wick, whispering something too low to hear, and the flame jumped down, igniting instantly. The room began to change color. Not gradually, not like a fade to black transition. A red filter descended from the ceiling grid, manually, slowly, like a curtain in a theater. The entire stage bathed in crimson light, thick and artificial, but somehow also organic. It made skin look raw. It made eyes look deeper. Michael sat motionless, his hands flat on the table, his spine straight. His lips were closed, but I could see the muscles in his jaw twitch, like he was gritting against something. Then came the chant. 3 backup dancers and 1 makeup artist, all women, all young, re-entered the room. Their eyes were glassy, movements robotic. They stood in a semicircle behind Michael and began to recite. Not sing, not hum. Recite. Something ancient. It was Latin. I've heard enough of that from Sunday Mass to recognize the difference. This was deeper, throatier, full of consonants that sounded like bones cracking, words that didn't belong to any country. They repeated it in perfect unison, over and over, their voices never breaking rhythm, never pausing for air. I tried writing it down phonetically once, just one line. Evenal. That was 1993. I wrote it on a napkin and left it in my locker. The next day, the napkin was gone and a note was left in its place. Do not write what the air is not meant to carry. That was the last time I ever tried. By 3:33 a.m., the temperature had dropped again. No air conditioning, no open doors, but I could see Michael's breath. Thick, slow clouds coming from his mouth like he was exhaling smoke instead of oxygen. No one else's breath showed, only his. And then behind him, something began to flicker. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but it became clearer. A second version of Michael, not solid, translucent. This one moved slightly ahead of him, like a video playing just a fraction of a second early. His lips moved in sync, but his body movements didn't match. It was as if one Michael sat still, trapped in time, and the other had already moved past him. This second Michael turned slightly toward. She smiled and whispered, "You'll sing forever, just not in your own mouth." I felt a chill in my spine that has never left. I watched as the flickering Michael continued lip-syncing to a melody I couldn't hear, something slower than Ben, more haunting than Stranger in Moscow. He moved like he was still trapped inside a memory, repeating a performance he no longer controlled. The original Michael, the one still seated, blinked once. His eyes darted left and right, like he couldn't see the other version of himself but felt its presence. His hands gripped the sides of the chair. Retrieved something from the table, the tuning fork. She didn't strike it. She just hovered it over his chest. And then, it vibrated. Without contact, without sound. It pulsed visibly, trembling faster than anything I'd seen. A high-frequency blur. And then Michael's body jerked. His head snapped back, eyes rolled up, and he slumped forward, limp. His forehead struck the table with a soft thud that echoed like a drum in the red-lit room. The translucent Michael kept singing. Didn't stop. Didn't fade. He walked slowly in a wide circle around the stage, brushing past the women still chanting, and they didn't react. Not even a glance, like he was no longer on the same layer of reality. Then began to cry. Not dramatically, not with grief, with certainty. As she whispered, "Done." The candle blew itself out. The red filter retracted. The dancers stopped chanting and walked out in silence. The translucent Michael faded slowly, frame by frame, like a VCR tape melting in reverse. And I stayed in place, sweating, knees numb, heart in my throat, thinking only one thing. What the hell had just been aired? Because that night, no one aired anything past the 60-minute mark. The public got a tame, polished edit. Clean, safe. Michael answering questions about childhood trauma and tabloids, asking empathy questions, nothing controversial, nothing unexplainable. But I was there. I saw what happened after. And even now, when I look up that interview, when I see it re-uploaded on YouTube or discussed in retrospectives, I get that same feeling I had under the red lights. That's not the real version. There's another cut. A cut only a handful of people ever saw. If you listen closely, if you pause at just the right second, you can see it. Michael's lip twitching ahead of his voice. his hand resting where the fork should have been. A flicker of shadow behind the set curtain walking a half-second ahead of itself. In 2003, someone sent me an unmarked VHS in the mail. No return address. It was labeled 113 post-cut. I never played it. I burned it. Because even now, decades later, sometimes I wake up at 3:33 a.m. sharp, and I feel my own breath hang in the air. I don't speak Latin, but sometimes in dreams, I mouth the words the dancers said. And in the mirror beside my bed, I see myself. And then I see myself again, a fraction of a second earlier. And I know what's happening. I'm sinking, just like he did. Chapter 5, I was told to burn the tape. Diary entry, November 2nd, 2023. I never wanted to take anything from that place. Not a souvenir, not a secret, not a memory. But sometimes what you carry doesn't ask for permission. Sometimes it follows you home. It was 4 days after the interview. The real one. The one no one ever saw. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours in a row. My clock kept stopping at 3:33 a.m. and restarting at 8:22, the exact timestamp that would haunt me for years. I told myself I imagined it. That trauma makes time feel broken. But what I found in that locker made me realize time wasn't the thing that broke. The locker was one of ours janitorial. It had my name taped to the inside. Locker 41. I hadn't opened it since the night of the tapping when I shoved my coat inside and never went back. I came in early that morning to avoid everyone. There it was, sitting right on top of my folded jacket. A VHS tape. No label, no case. No writing on the reel, just dust and a faint smear of something red near the corner, not blood, too bright. Lipstick maybe, or wax. I didn't remember putting it there. I knew I hadn't. I took it to the where we kept an old TV VCR combo for downtime, popped it in. Static. Then footage, grainy, black and white, a shot of the red-filtered studio. Seated, Michael slumped. I checked the counter. Read 00000. I fast-forwarded. At 1 hour, 3 minutes, 45 seconds, the image flickered hard. That was the official end, according to the studio archives. But this tape, it kept going. All the way to 8 hours, 22 minutes, 17 seconds. And I watched every minute of it. Things I'll never forget. Speaking in tongues as backup dancers circled counterclockwise. Michael's reflection in the mirror moving when he was. That second version of him humming lullabies underneath the audio track. Candles melting upward. One PA vomiting feathers. The mirror that briefly showed me, standing behind the machine even though I wasn't there when it was filmed. It was too much. I didn't want it. I didn't want any of it. I tried to report it, brought it to my supervisor. He never even looked at it. Instead, he handed me a manila envelope. Inside, a single typed memo and a black marker. To all floor staff. Ray Echo Copy 12-3. Any and all materials marked Echo Copy 12-3 are to be disposed of per Directive 9. Internal timestamp discrepancies exceeding 10345 are to be ignored. Incinerate if possible. Do not duplicate. Do not log retrieval. No exceptions. No signature. Just a production stamp in faded blue ink. The next hour I got called to the producer's office. Not the floor producer, executive. Guy named Alan, slick. Wore rings on every finger like he was auditioning for a cult. He didn't shake my hand, didn't ask me to sit. Do you still have the tape? I hesitated. "You're supposed to burn it," he said. "If you haven't, take it to the stage incinerator, put it in, close the lid, leave, don't watch it again." Then he handed me an envelope. Cash. I didn't count it, but I saw at least 4 stacks of $100 bills. There was also a document clipped inside. A non-disclosure agreement. 2 pages, vague language, repetitive phrasing, but one clause stood out. Recipient agrees never to replicate, broadcast, describe, or paraphrase content deemed level echo read under sole transfer tier designation 4. I asked tier what? He smiled, too calm. "We're not threatening you," he said. "We're just letting you choose the easier end of the hallway." I refused. I took the tape and left, fast. That night, I used my after hours to access the studio incinerator. Massive steel drum, 1,000+ degree burn temp, used for shredding props, pyro waste, stunt debris. I threw the tape in. I closed the lid, hit the button, watched the temp rise on the digital display. Then I heard it. Audio. From inside the fire. First just whispers, then a hum, then words I'll never forget. "He sang for you, now you breathe for him." The machine shut down on its own. When I opened the hatch, the tape was still there. Not melted, not even warped. But black now, as if it had absorbed the flame. I picked it up with tongs. It hissed in the air. I threw it into a locked safe in my trunk and drove. When I got home, I found my door unlocked. Nothing missing. TV, laptop, cash, all there. Except my pillow was gone. Not the sheet, not the blanket, just the pillow. Next morning, I found a note on my dashboard, placed under the wiper. The mouth must rest where the voice once slept. I called a friend at a local news affiliate, gave him a copy I'd made. He tried to upload it to the internal server. Bounced. Error message. Unauthorized sole access, tier 4. That's not a system error. That's not even a real protocol. I sent it again, this time via email. Same bounce, same error. I tried mailing a USB to a reporter in Oakland. It got returned, unopened, with a sticker on the envelope. A recipient not cleared for dual sole index. Not dual auth, not sender restricted. Dual sole. What the hell does that even mean? The next day, someone re-uploaded a single frame to an internal studio server. Just one. Michael's face mid-scream, mouth wide, eyes blank. Overlaid across his lips. A waveform. His voice. You could see it clearly, the wave signature from the audio track of her closing monologue. The one that wasn't broadcast. The one she said just after Michael collapsed. The echo doesn't end when the song does. I don't know who uploaded it. It got pulled within 3 minutes. But it had a file name, Echo Copy 12.3 Persistent. I left the city that night. Moved in with an old uncle in San for a while. But the tape came with me. I couldn't destroy it, I tried. Acid, magnets cutting it open. The inside wasn't magnetic tape. It was thread. Woven. And faintly pulsing. I locked it in a freezer for 6 months. Once a week, I'd hear something from inside the ice box. Footsteps. A snap. A low voice humming Ben backwards. And then, every time, at 3:33 a.m., my freezer light would flicker, and the timer display would reset itself to 8:22:17. I eventually buried the tape, somewhere off a mountain trail in the Sierra Nevadas, wrapped in lead, sealed in a concrete box, surrounded by mirrors. But it didn't stay gone. 3 years later, I opened a shoebox in storage looking for old tax forms. The tape was there. The same one, only now it had a new label burned into the edge. Still playing. Chapter 6, The Second Michael. Diary entry, November 9th, 2023. It had been 2 weeks since I tried to burn the tape. 2 weeks of waking up at 3:33 a.m. sharp, of throwing salt at vents, of staring at every screen like it might suddenly turn itself on. I'd quit the studio job, packed up my things, moved to a different zip code. But no matter how far I drove, Michael followed. Not the man, not the version the world wept for, but something else. Something that smiled like him, danced like him, sang like him. Something that wore his face like a glove. I remember the exact moment I saw it. It was a Thursday. I was in a cheap diner off I-15, sitting near a busted TV bolted into the corner. It was playing an award show rerun, something from Bet, or maybe Soul Train. I wasn't paying much attention until the host said, "And now, ladies, and please welcome the king of pop, Michael Jackson." Applause, cue music. Then he walked out. Black jacket, aviator shades, hair curled tight, familiar, timeless. But wrong. I didn't realize what I was seeing at first. My brain wanted it to make sense, wanted it to be normal. Then he blinked, and I felt it before I even understood it. The blink was off, too slow, delayed, like a GIF loop starting a second too late. One eye closed before the other by less than a second, but it was enough. Then he waved, and his mouth smiled, but the rest of his face didn't follow. The camera zoomed in. His skin looked too smooth, not like makeup or digital smoothing, but like absence, like texture had been erased. Then he began to speak. The audio was clean. The voice was unmistakably his. But his lips weren't moving in sync. They were close, just off by a hair. But if you've seen him perform, you know Michael was a master of timing. Every syllable, every breath, every wink was part of the choreography. This looked like puppetry. I didn't finish my food. I didn't pay. I just left. Raced home. Dug out the old monitor and VCR combo from the garage. Plugged in the Echo Copy 12.3 tape I'd sworn never to touch again. I fast-forwarded to timestamp 4:22:09 during the red filter section. And there it was. A glitch. For just 0.3 seconds, Michael split, not metaphorically, literally. 2 frames of him overlapped, one slumped, one upright, one silent, one mouthing something the audio never captured. I played it back in slow motion, frame by frame. At the exact moment of the split, looked directly into the camera and whispered, "He will be mirrored." I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I received an anonymous message in a burned email account I hadn't used in years. No greeting, no signature. Just this. That was Mike, it never was. Attached was a grainy JPEG of a rehearsal lineup from the tapping day. 4 dancers circled in red, one name scribbled in black. Lard, a backup dancer from the set. I traced her online, nothing current. Old tour photos from the dangerous era. One interview where she mentioned the tapping, called it the most spiritual moment of her life. I replied to the burner. No response. But the next day's website changed. Not the front page, the archive. Buried 3 levels deep under segment notes was a page titled Segment 44, Transfer Success, Harp Host Active. It had no links, no images, just that phrase. I clicked the icon beside Harp Host. It crashed the page. When I reloaded, the entire site had been reset. I wasn't the only one seeing ghosts. A studio guard, one of the night guys I used to smoke with behind the soundstage, had a seizure. Walked onto the empty set of Studio G one night. Cameras were off. Lights were powered down, just wandered enduring patrol. By the time they found him, he was convulsing on the floor, blood coming from his ears. Paramedics arrived, stabilized him. He only said one word, over and over. A twin, 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 twin. He never returned to work. 3 days later, Michael canceled his next 3 scheduled appearances. All official press releases cited vocal strain. But he hadn't sung at the award show. Not a note. That same week, launched Super Soul Sunday. A show about transformation, truth, and the divine echo within. Her first guest, a former sound technician from ABC. He talked about frequency therapy, voice harmonics, how resonance could unlock trauma. I knew his face. He was the guy who handed me the incinerator memo. I screamed at the TV until my neighbor banged on the wall. But it didn't stop there. I started hearing Michael. Not from the tape, from the vents. Late at night when the AC kicked on, I'd hear whispers riding the airflow. They started as murmurs, incoherent, then clearer. Lyrics, "You are not alone. Don't stop till you get enough. I'm starting with the man in the mirror." But always slightly off-key, slightly too slow, and always in his voice, not a recording, not a sample. Live. I moved the bed. I slept on the floor. Then the floor started humming. I ripped open the vent cover. Found a mirror screwed inside the duct. No dust, no fingerprints. Just my reflection. And behind me, always him. Chapter 7, The Room Never Left Me. Diary entry, November 16th, 2023. They say trauma fades. That time smooths the edges. That memory, no matter how jagged, dulls with repetition. They're wronged. The room never left me. Not Studio G, not the circle. Not Michael or whatever wore Michael's voice after 3:33 a.m. that night. I tried to leave. I really did. In 1995, I moved to Denver. Got a new job working night shifts at a parking garage. Swapped names with a distant cousin who died in the 80s. Got myself a fresh driver's license from a guy who only asked for $200 and a passport photo. I thought that would be enough. For a few days, it was. Then, on my 4th night in the city, I sat alone in the booth, flipping through channels on the little black and white TV used for weather updates. It was 1:33 a.m. when the static broke. And there she was. Not an old episode, not an interview. Just her face, still motionless, smiling at me like she was waiting for me to say something. No network logo, no channel number, just her. I changed the channel. She was there too. I turned the volume down. Her lips moved in sync with no sound at all. It lasted exactly 60 seconds, ending right as the clock turned to 1:34. I convinced myself it was a glitch, a fluke, an overlapping feed or a late-night promo loop gone wrong. But it happened again. At 2:33, then 3:33, then 4:33. Every single hour on the 33rd minute, every screen I looked at, TV monitor, even the automated gate display, flickered briefly to her. I smashed the TV on the 5th night. Didn't help. Next morning, I received a letter. No return address. Inside, just a photo. It was the soundstage, Studio G, but not from the past, from the future. The date written in pen on the back was 3 days ahead. The building in the photo was still intact, still red-painted walls, still the giant service door with the rusted rollers. There was something in the window, something small, black, boxy. I couldn't tell for sure, but it looked like the same black box had brought that night. The photo wasn't printed on normal paper. It was Polaroid-like, but too crisp, too still. No blur, like the image itself had never moved. I threw it away. It came back. 3 days later, I found it sitting on my pillow. Only this time the date had changed. Now it read today. I decided to start documenting myself, recording my dreams. I set up a cheap audio recorder by my bed, hit record every night, 8 hours of nothing most nights. Until one night, I played it back. At 3:33 a.m., my voice mumbled, "I still have it." And then a rustling noise, a drawer sliding, something heavy landing on the mattress. I don't sleepwalk, never have. But when I woke up, the VHS tape was in my hands. I hadn't seen it in over a year. I buried it, remember? Sierra Nevadas, lead box, mirrors, concrete. And yet here it was. Same burned edges. Same faint, warm hum. No damage, just waiting. I didn't plug it in. Instead, I looked up. My mirror, the one above the dresser, was moving. Half a second behind. At first, I thought it was my eyes. Then I blinked, counted. My real eyes closed. The reflection followed 0.5 seconds later. Then my lips moved. No words, just muscle memory, testing. The reflection smiled back too slowly. Then behind my reflection, his voice whispered in perfect sync. "Keep watching." I smashed that mirror with a hammer. Replaced it. The new one did the same thing. I covered every reflective surface in the house. Aluminum foil, duct tape, spray paint. Still didn't work. Some nights I saw myself anyway, reflected on the TV screen when it was off, in the doorknob, in the black part of my phone when it dimmed. I gave up. Tried therapy. I didn't tell the therapist everything, just enough to explain the anxiety. The nightmares, the mirrors, the TV. She listened, nodded, hit record on her little cassette machine, told me this was just to track progress. Next session, she played it back. Static. Then mid-session, the tape glitched. My voice faded. Her voice took over. He won't forget. My therapist nearly fell out of her chair. She asked if I doctored the tape. I didn't answer. She never called me back. Didn't return my messages. Didn't exist in her clinic system 2 weeks later. Her name was gone from the front desk directory. That was when I made the worst decision of all. I went looking. I drove back to Burbank, parked across from the old studio, the one I watched get torn down in 2009. Saw the photos, read the local articles, site cleared, sold. Planned redevelopment canceled due to zoning issues. Except it wasn't torn down. Because in 2011, I drove past it, and it was still standing. Exactly the same. The same paint. Same loading dock. Same number, 113. I circled the block 3 times. Watched it from my car. No workers, no crew, no power trucks. Just light inside, flickering faintly red through the window slats. I didn't go in. I couldn't. I drove back home 5 hours straight. Tried to forget again. But 3 days later, the black box showed up. On my front porch. No label, no return address. Closed tight, cool to the touch. Still humming. Not loud. Just enough to know it was alive. I didn't open it. I didn't move it. I left it there. It's still outside. And I haven't stepped out since. Because I know if I open that box, if I even touch it again, she'll finish the transfer. And the second Michael, he'll stop waiting. Chapter 8, she took something that wasn't hers. Diary entry, November 23rd, 2023. I've spent the last 30 years trying to forget one night. A night where light pulsed like breath, mirrors bent reality, and a voice. The voice was ripped from a man and stitched into something else. I ran from it. I changed names, burned tapes, covered mirrors, whispered confessions into duct vents just to feel sane, and still it followed. The box, the voices, the reflection delay, the whisper at 3:33 a.m. And eventually it became clear there was no outrunning what I'd witnessed, what I'd inhaled, because whatever took that night, it was never meant to stay in her hands. And whatever Michael gave, it didn't stop at the edge of his body. It lingered, it echoed, it searched. And now it had finally found me. So I went back. Not because I was brave, but because I was done being haunted by something pretending not to exist. Studio G. ABC lot, Burbank. Except it wasn't marked on any GPS anymore. The pin had been wiped. Google Earth showed a flat concrete slab where a building once stood. But I remembered every turn, every street, every damn crack in the sidewalk. And there it was. Still standing. Untouched, red trim paint. A slight lean to the left like it was tired but holding on. The front door unlocked. No chains. No, just a soft push, and it swung open like it had been waiting for me this whole time. Inside, everything was exactly the same. Not aged. Not dusty. Reset. As if time looped the room the moment the first chant was spoken, and never allowed a second to pass. The overhead lights flickered on the moment I stepped in. Not harshly, warmly, like a memory. The calendar on the wall read, May 20th, 1993. I stared at it for a long time, touched it. It was real, paper, ink, the kind that only curled at the edges after weeks of hanging, and it hadn't curled at all. Then I felt it. The temperature dropped. Not like AC kicking in, like air thinning. Like I was on a plane about to depressurize. My fingers turned numb, my breath fogged. And that's when I heard it. Michael's voice. Not through speakers, not through tape. Through the walls. A cappella, raw, vulnerable. He sang the last take he ever recorded. Hold my hand and I'll take you there, somehow, someday. But the walls didn't vibrate, the floor did. The sound came from below, as if his voice had been buried beneath the stage and was trying to surface. Then silence. followed by footsteps. And she appeared. But not older, not younger, just tuned. That's the only word for it. She looked at me with eyes that didn't blink, didn't move. Her face was perfect, not youthful. Just unmoving, like time didn't apply to her, like she'd stepped outside of age and come back hollowed. She didn't walk toward me. She just appeared at the center of the circle, her body rising from the exact middle of that embedded ring of lights. Her lips parted, and in the softest voice I've ever heard, she said, "He had more than talent, he had voice." I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. The room held me. My lungs refused to draw air. My mouth dried. Then something behind her caught my eye. Pinned to the wall. A contract. The same parchment I remembered from that night. The same faint red ink. Except this time, there was a new signature. Mine, scrawled in black, my handwriting. I never signed it. I swear to God I never did. And yet it was there, dated, fingerprinted. The pen used lay just below it, still uncapped, still wet. Turned to face me fully. She held the black box, unopened, still humming. She stepped out of the circle and into my shadow. Stood so close I could feel her presence touch the back of my thoughts. Not my skin, not my soul, my thoughts. And she said, "You kept it alive." Her eyes twitched for the first time. "Now it's your voice it wants." I shook my head. She didn't care. She lifted the box, held it out. I didn't touch it, but my hands rose anyway. Not from choice, from pull. The same kind of pull that makes your ears ring before a storm. That makes old film projectors rewind themselves. That makes infants cry when there's no sound. I took the box. The moment I did, the studio shook. Not an earthquake. A correction. Like the building had been out of sync, and my contact restored its rhythm. The lights dimmed. The mirrors returned, not as glass, but as flickers on the walls, each showing different versions of me. One younger, one older, one with Michael's eyes. One mouthing's voice. Then she whispered, "The soul is sound." And I opened the box. What came out wasn't fire. It was light. Red. But not color red. Not crimson, not blood. Red as a frequency. As if color had been turned into tone, and it hummed in my bones. It filled the room. Burned away the set. Melted the air. The mirrors shattered not physically, but conceptually, like their idea couldn't hold anymore. And then I saw him. Michael. All versions, all timelines, all echoes. He didn't speak, but his lips moved with mine. And together we whispered. She took something that wasn't hers. And then everything collapsed. Not fell. Collapsed. Time, sound, space, language, me. I was nowhere and everywhere. A stage, a vent, a cassette, a lyric. I became sound. And that sound had memory. And that memory had weight. And that weight fell back into the world through speakers, whispers, dreams, mirrors, and mouths that never consented to echo. That's where I am now. That's where I'll be. And if you ever hear a version of Michael that doesn't quite sound right, if the reflection in your screen blinks a beat too slow, If looks at you from a shelf of thumbnails, and you feel like she's still moving even when paused. Then you found the room, and the room found you. The soul is sound, and now it's listening.